everybody, and welcome to the Bear Necessities. I'm Bear, and today we're going to be making double chocolate chip cookies. So that's a chocolate cookie with chocolate chips. I'm also adding a few dried cranberries in there. They're my favorite cran basins. That'll probably not get me sued. So we're going to use those in there as well because that chewy little piece of fruit is so delightful. The amounts that I'm going to be using here on my mixing table are going to be for a quarter batch of my normal cookies. I'm going to be giving you, though, the ingredient list for a half batch. It easily multiplies, which is great for a recipe because sometimes they don't work that way. This cookie recipe works in whatever amounts you need. For this recipe, you're going to need 1 cup of all-purpose flour. You can use cake flour for this. I wouldn't suggest it strongly. If you do only have cake flour for some reason, I've run into that problem before, you're going to need to stir it just a little bit longer to build up a little bit more of the gluten that you're going to get in all-purpose. That way your cookies hold together a little bit more tightly and you get that perfect cookie chew. That's all. And then you'll also need half a cup of cocoa. Whatever you prefer, if it's ruby, dark, regular, Dutch process, alkaline, whatever you have, go ahead and just use a half cup of that cocoa. Then you are going to need half a cup of white granulated sugar. You can use caster sugar, it's fine. It compacts a little bit more, so they'll be, an oomph sweeter. That's fine. And then you'll need brown sugar. You can use light or dark. It's up to your own preferences. I prefer dark because I like that extra molasses flavor in there. It adds just that smoky sweetness that is a part of my childhood. So I hold on to that. You'll also need half a stick of butter, which measures out by weight to 2 ounces or 4 tablespoons. So that's what you're using there. You can also just do 1/4 cup. Take your pick. You will need 1 egg. And then you'll also need a teaspoon of vanilla. I have my egg and vanilla kind of mixed in here. And finally, you will need half a teaspoon of baking soda, not baking powder. And then you'll need 1 full teaspoon of salt. This gives it that little extra bite and it really brings out the flavor of the chocolate. So let's get things going. Into the bowl, first you're going to add your butter. And to that, I'm going to go ahead and add my sugars. So again, this is granulated sugar and brown sugar mixed together. And we're going to get those creamed together. So when you're creaming sugars together, what you're shooting for is a nice homogeneous mix where it looks like it's just fluffy. All right, the color has lightened just a little bit for me. So to this, I'm now going to add my egg and vanilla. And remember, I'm making a quarter batch, and the ingredient list I gave you is for a half batch. So again, don't freak out if yours makes about double what mine will, because this should make almost exactly 1 dozen cookies for my little cookie scoop. All right, so I had to stir this for quite a bit longer because my butter was just so melted. You do need it to come back together, if at all possible, just a little bit, so that you can get fluffy, soft. Almost looks like a caramel icing. But you see it just whips together really nicely. And again, this is our butter, sugar, and egg and vanilla. To this, we're going to add our baking soda and our salt. And finally, to this, we're going to add our flour and our cocoa powder. And give this a bit of a stir to get it mixed together. But remember, you don't want to overmix things like cookies, cakes. You don't want to overmix any kind of regular quick bakes like this. They're not pleasant. They become chewy in the wrong way. We don't want that. This mix is going to look a little bit on the dry side, and that's okay. As you keep stirring, it will come together, and eventually it'll start pulling a little bit of the dough away from the sides. And that's where we want it, is at that nice solid. And like I said, I use dark cocoa in here, so yours may come out just a little bit lighter than this. Yum. It's chocolate, either way. Finally to this, we're going to add our chocolate chips, and of course I'm adding my dried cranberries, however we call them. And let's just get those mixed in. You don't have to do a huge amount of mixing at this point. Just make sure it's kind of evenly spread throughout, so that when we start scooping, every cookie gets just a little bit of both. All right, and there we go. Simple enough, right? Let's get everything off of my spoon here. There we go. Leave as little behind as possible, because it's cookies, and cookies are precious. And let me grab a baking sheet. I've already got parchment on here, and I do have my oven already preheated to 350 degrees, so it is ready to go as well. I'm going to get these scooped, and again, I made a quarter batch. The amounts of ingredients I gave you will make a half, so yours will make far more than mine will. All right, so I've got that scooped. It actually made 12 and a half cookies. I'm guessing because of the dried cranberries that were in here, they just took up a little bit more space than the chocolate chips would. Who knows? But it's going to turn out fine. So now we're going to go ahead and bake our cookies for 11 minutes. And about halfway through that, I'm going to turn them around inside of my oven, because my oven has a hot spot in the back. So I want to make sure everybody gets a nice even bake. It's going to be really hard to tell on these when they're perfect, so you're going to need to go by your instincts and time. If you don't have instincts, go by time. If your oven tends to run a little bit hot and you've noticed it before in baking other things or just whatever you've cooked in there, pay attention to that. Around 10 minutes, start watching the cookies. Check on them. You're going to want the edges to be set and look kind of dry, almost like a good pancake. And then the center should be kind of puffed and maybe a little bit bubbly. That's what you're shooting for, because when you cool them, they will settle and then they will be the perfect consistency. So I'm going to pop these in the oven, 11 minutes, and I will be right back. Alrighty, so our cookies have baked for 11 minutes. They stayed a little bit on the poofy side, which is fine. I've let them cool for 5 minutes, just so I can get them off the tray and onto a plate. Alrighty. So here we are, double chocolate chip cookies. I hope you enjoy making this as much as I did. It was nice to get back and just make something super simple. I appreciate y'all being here, and until next time, bye.